Hi witchlings, welcome back to my channel. It's your local chaotic witch aunt. Alright, I have my coffee, I have everything set up, I have my candles in the back. I don't know, you probably can't see them. But I need to grab my computer because today we are going to be reading the paranormal stories that you guys sent me. So your ghost stories and your spooky stories are going to be shared with the entire world, and I'm going to react to them in real time. So yeah, and next week's video is probably going to be cemetery etiquette. I actually took a class on cemetery etiquette so I could get better at it, so I'm going to also be linking the individual who did the class because they're amazing and they have a book coming out, and they gave me book suggestions as well to help with cemetery etiquette. Okay. So starting off, I'm going to take a sip of coffee and then we'll begin. This is from Lily. Hi, I want to say huge from New York. Thank you. My boyfriend and I were living in a really old apartment building from 1919 that used to be a hotel. Always a good start. Old buildings that used to be other places. As soon as we moved in, I knew it was off and we had things happen, like things being moved around, my cat freaking out, pictures falling off the wall. One actually fell on me as I was sleeping. They were all hung with nails, so they shouldn't have been falling. I kind of just brushed it off and cleansed the apartment. Nothing happened for a while, but at the beginning of this year, we got approved for a new apartment and started packing. We had a toaster over on top of our cabinets. It had plenty of room and wasn't hanging off the cabinets. A few nights before we moved, around 2 in the morning, it flew off the top shelf and landed about 3 feet from our bed. We lived in a studio, so our bed was about 10 feet from the kitchen. My boyfriend quickly took a picture with the flash on because he wanted to look at it later and see if we could see any spirits in the picture. This was scary, and through the process of moving, there was an awful smell that developed and a really heavy evil presence. Luckily, we were there only 3 more days. This is what we caught. Turn the brightness up. I'll have to insert the picture right here. To me, looks like something. This paranormal story is from Logan. I have a lot of these, so I can always do another one, but thank you, Logan. I volunteer at a local park doing animal care and wildlife studies. We have 2 buildings, the visitor center and the nature center. The nature center is a cabin in the very distant woods, so we don't allow guests unless they are part of an education program to enter the nature center. So when I'm in there, I'm usually alone. We have 2 floors within the nature center. The first is where all the animals are located, and the second is the cold old basement with creaky steps. Oh, a building isn't like a research facility. It's more of like an old park ranger cabin. The events that go down there range from tiny things to extremely paranormal things. One day I was walking up to the cabin. There are some big windows that are lit up by the tank where we hold one of the native turtles. I saw someone walk by. It's normal for one of the other volunteers' staff to book shifts at the same time. I assumed it was one of them. I went to the door, but it was locked. I don't like this. It's very spooky. Using the volunteer key, I unlocked the door to find that the cabin was empty. I looked in the basement and no one was there. This wasn't the first time I heard and saw things that weren't there. Occasionally I would hear someone walk inside, but when I turn around, there's not a person in sight. The basement doesn't help either. Within the basement is nature education equipment, old animal care supplies, retired taxidermy, and the worst part is a giant freezer filled with roadkill. Why? I don't know why we still have all of the roadkill there, but we do. That's what he says. I'm not the only person who this has happened to. One of the other volunteers told me about how she once heard someone talking from the bathroom, but she was the only person who had access to the cabin. I 100% believe that there are spirits near and around the cabin in the woods it resides in, but what I experienced could be nothing or it could be something. Anyway, I guess not really a story, but that happened to me. That's terrifying. I would not work there anymore, only because I'm okay with spirits. Like, I'm fine with spirits when they visit. I understand them. Like, they're usually not harmful. But if you're consistently hearing things in your place of work and that's freaky. That's freaky to me. This one is from Abigail. Thank you, Abigail. So Abigail says, I used to live in a really old farmhouse, sometimes still do as my father still lives there. Old houses are something. I just gotten off the bus and my mother was at a doctor's appointment, so I was home alone for a bit. I had a routine of getting home, getting a snack, and then doing homework, as you should. Always stay fed. So as I was going back to the living room from the kitchen, there was a line of doorways on the wall to the right. It went bedroom, stairs, and then another bedroom. There was a curtain covering the stairs to keep the heat from the wood stove downstairs where everyone slept. So as I stepped into the room, the curtain was puffed up. And it was strange because there was no draft. It was a dry winter, so I got spooked and stepped back into the kitchen. As I did, the curtain went down again. I stepped in and out a couple times and the curtain went up and down with me stepping. I did this for like a solid 5 minutes, then my mom got home and it stopped. I think this was one of the most prominent stories I have from that house, and after seeing my dead childhood cat everywhere she used to frequent and the picky dance instructor... Oh, you left me on a cliffhanger like that? Ma'am, sir, ma'am. You saw your dead childhood cat everywhere and the picky dance instructor. What makes the dance instructor picky? See, now I want to know more. 2 stories from Fatima. I'm going to read the first one. So, I used to study in an old uni, like 1600s old, so you can imagine that it went through a lot already. For context, this uni is a Catholic uni. It has a church and campus and all that jazz. And in World War II, it was a garrison. They held prisoners there. Oh, fuck. The building I studied in is roughly 100 years old, and that was where they had prisoners. The building in itself is creepy, but it had random doors above the walls, dark staircases, an old elevator, murals and walls, even a museum with portraits of priests whose dead eyes follow you around as you walk. There was a room with a very old piano, and it was said that a lady is attached to the piano, and sure enough, during 7 a.m., I always hear someone playing piano, even if the room was empty or if a class was in session. But when I asked my classmates, they didn't hear it. I've also been weary coming home late. This happened multiple times to me, so when I said to stay late because of an extracurricular, I always use the stairs when I'm alone because I'm a paranoid like that. I understand why. But as I come down from the grand staircase, I see women running around in white flowing dresses, but they disappear into walls and pillars. This became so normal to me I didn't mind staying late or coming early. This is from Yasmin. It's a little longer. I was in my first year of university and one of my friends is a Wiccan. Some strange things have been happening in my accommodation block, weird noises mostly, which wouldn't be too unusual because it was an old building. My Wiccan friend lived across campus in a different block, but once I told her about the noises and that I'd been feeling strange in my accommodation, she said she didn't want to mention anything because she didn't want to scare me, but she had seen something in the corner of my room, and she didn't elaborate. Obviously, I was freaked out, so I asked her if I could stay at hers for the next few nights or if she could stay with me, so I wasn't alone in the room, and she said she was going home for the weekend. I'm sorry. That's really mean. Not even, like, mean in, like, a mean way, but just, like, oh, by the way, like, saw something in the corner of your room, yeah, bye, like... So I was like, what do I do if I hear noises and I am freaked out? She said to make sure to lock my door, and that if I thought I wasn't alone, to think or say thank you for visiting, but please leave. So I woke up early the Saturday morning and was very uneasy. The floorboards were creaking and the radiator was banging as if someone was knocking on it, which of course could be the old pipes, but just in case I thought, thank you for visiting, but please leave, and then the banging on the radiator got louder and increasingly fast. And I closed my eyes and thought it this time, like I don't know how to describe it, but I projected it in my mind. The banging stopped immediately, and my whole body shook. This is the strangest and most inexplicable experience of my life. I don't get fits or body shaking for any health reason, and never have done anything like this since. My body just fully, uncontrollably shook for about 10 seconds. I don't know what, to this day, I don't know what went on there. I can remember telling my friend about it when she got back, and I can't remember exactly how she responded, but she didn't offer her opinion of what happened. So obviously there were a lot more stories. I can't get through them all. I could do another one of these and you guys could send me more paranormal stories. But to finish up, I'm going to tell one of my paranormal stories. As you guys know, I am like a psychic medium. I don't necessarily like the term medium or psychic, so I tend to use like I see things, I feel things, I'm gifted or I have gifts. So I made a TikTok about this, but I think a lot of my YouTube users didn't know this happened. I am clairsentient and clairaudient, which means I feel the presence of people and I can hear them, not actually hear them, but in the clairaudient way of like getting messages. I am not clairvoyant. I do not see spirits. I can like see them in my mind's eye, but I never get actual visual manifestations of spirits except for one time. One time I saw things and it scared me a little and it scared my parents. So this was when I was down in Eastern Shore of Maryland on vacation with my family. It was earlier in the summer. We were staying in this there's a little dog hair, tiny little house. So it started when we were driving into town and driving back. I looked down a road. This was dusk time when these two first occurrences happened. But I looked down a road and I remember seeing like a very large animal. And my brain immediately thought like bear because of how big it was. And it wasn't like a deer. You know how deer have like, deer aren't like huge. Some deer are, but my brain really said like, oh, that's a bear. I thought bear or like elk, neither of which existed in that area, neither of which are native to that area, but my brain was like bear or elk. And I got very frightened because I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And I didn't see the full animal. It was like a shadow of it. And I was like, there's no way that there's a bear or an elk around here, but that's how big it was. That's how big the shadow was. Like, I thought it was a grizzly or a black bear. We're on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. There are no grizzlies or black bears. I'm fully aware that this could have been like a deer or a horse, and we were driving, so I didn't fully see it, but it felt weird, and it felt like I wasn't supposed to see it or know what it was. And I was like, okay, that's a little strange. I'm just gonna ignore it and not give it any attention, because if it's like a nature spirit or a spirit native to the land, I don't want to like give it any attention. And then as we were driving, I remember I looked over to the other side, and this was a while down the road, and I saw a person walking through a yard. And as I saw this person walk through the yard, I was like, oh, okay. And they went behind a tree, and I was expecting them to come out on the other side of the tree, but they didn't. And then I turned and looked, and there was no one there. And I was like, okay, so there are things. Like, these are things. And these were both in the same time period. And I was like, this is so strange, because like I understand my brain and my eyes playing tricks on me when it's dark. But this was like sundown, daylight. Like, I was seeing things when it was still light out, and that freaked me out. And I was like, okay, I'm not telling my sister or my mom because they get really freaked out by these things. So I'm just going to leave them alone and not pay them any attention. I assumed that they were just like nature spirits native to the land. And I kind of let it go. It's like, okay, leave them alone, they'll leave you alone. Don't bring any attention to yourself. Then, me and my dad were driving to the grocery store. This was like, we were going to get dinner or something, and we were driving, and it was dark now. So this could have been my eyes playing tricks on me, but it was dark now, and I saw a person cross across the road. Like, just something run across the road. And I was like, cool, all right. And of course, when we passed, and I looked, and our headlights were kind of right there was nothing there. And I was like, maybe it's a deer. But we would have I could have physically seen the deer. This was like a shadow running across the road. And I was very much like, I hate it here. So whatever this was a very spiritually active area. I don't know why. And then the fourth thing that happened. So it wasn't just two or three things. This was 4 things within 5 days, which is why I was so freaked out. Because I was like, this is kind of weird that all these things are happening within a 5-day span. My mom and sister and other sister were all leaving. They left a day early, and my dad and I stayed the night and left the next day. And my dad was outside doing stuff with my mom, helping them pack the car, making sure they were all set and ready to go. They had the dogs, etc. So it was really just me and my dad. Everyone else was in the car and getting ready. There were no dogs there. It was dark. It was this house by the water. There were other houses nearby, but no people nearby. And I didn't really come up to the house. So I'm sitting on the floor, on my phone, plugged into the wall, and I'm sitting, and I hear my dad walk up to the door. I hear his footsteps on the porch outside, and then they stop. And I was fully expecting him to open the door and walk in. And I didn't know why he wasn't coming in, because I heard him walk up to the door and then stop. And I'm like, okay, that's a little weird. So I got up. I put my phone down and I got up, and I'm like, I wonder if he needs help with the door. I go over the door and there's no one there. And I was like, fuck. And I open the door, and my dad is halfway across the yard, by the driveway, which was 10 feet away, walking towards me. And I look at him and I go, did you just come up to the door? And he goes, no, I was over there. And I'm like, I fully thought that he had walked up to the door because I heard him walk up to the door and there were no animals. There was like, the porch wasn't like, was old, but it wasn't old enough that the creaking was gonna happen. It wasn't windy, nothing was there. I distinctly heard footsteps, and then it just stopped. And I'm like, okay, come inside, and I'm just gonna like put some stuff around the house so whatever it is doesn't come in. And I just assumed that it was like a visitor. And I wasn't surprised considering the 3 other things that I had seen in those 5 days. But that was the one that was it was very close. Like, it was right outside the house. And it was very kind of scary because I was like, huh. All the other ones were just like shadows. Didn't really bother me. This one was like at the door. Anyways, scary. But yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. Cemetery Etiquette is coming out next week. I'll have book stuff, resources, etc. And it's going to be really exciting and very fun. Yeah, so if you want to hear more paranormal stories, leave a comment, let me know. I am going to be uploading this tomorrow, which is Thursday. Today is Wednesday. If you have stayed for the entire video, thank you. If you want to subscribe, like, turn notifications on, go for it. If not, no pressure. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.